Hello, everybody, and welcome to our conversation in our series on Seeking Harmony. For today, we are a member short, and that's because Sage is having a bit of a medical challenge today. So just keep that in mind and offer up your prayers so that she makes a quick recovery. But with the rest of the team, we are here to continue. And so welcome to everybody, and thank you for joining us. We are looking at some topical things that have happened over the last week or so, and primary that stood out was the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. And so one of the things that really starts to surface is the sense that there is quite a shift happening in the UK with them having gone through the change of prime minister. Now they're going through a change of a monarch. And so I think that was one of the things that stood out for us. There's more things around the Ukraine, Ukraine and Russian war. And yeah, so we will take it from there and we'll just talk through what we believe is being shown to us in these two big pieces of news, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, obviously, feels like the biggest news of this week is Queen Elizabeth II's death and passing. Just, I think, very emotional because she was the longest, she was the British monarch who had the longest reign, and it was 70 years, and she, was there, and she was around the world wars, when we went into economical shift and social shift, decolonization, a lot of things. So, and she was kind of, I guess, this person where you kind of felt that she would be around forever because she's just that part of the culture and a country's image. And so that definitely brought up a lot for British people and around the world. And I'm thinking for British people because they're obviously in a government change right now, experiencing strikes and a lot of changes already. And so this feels like a huge maybe upheaval for them. A lot of evolution. And yeah, I'm not gonna talk in their name, obviously, but I think we can kind of talk about unpack what that all means for them at first. And yeah, I'm curious, what do you think about this, guys?
Yeah, I feel like with the new king taking over, I don't know, I just have the feeling that there's not going to be much change, and it's really interesting to look at the position of the monarchy in Britain because, King Charles was saying that he can't even continue to donate to charities that he was donating to because that would make him not neutral, so it's like the monarchy has to remain completely neutral or they could risk being unseated, and I don't know. I feel like if I were in that position, I would just speak my mind anyway. And if you get unseated, oh well, who cares? Because, maybe that's just saying that the UK is ready to be rid of their monarchy then, But yeah, I just wanted to hear what you guys think about that too.
So that's quite interesting because I think one of the things that came up in our chat over the last week was just also what is the actual purpose of the monarchy in the first place? Because if they are required to be so neutral that any shift or any utterance in any direction could shake their position or shake their stronghold, then you have to wonder how effective they really are. And also, is it like, my sense is, as you said, like, if you like speaking your mind, so how do they influence something in the country or in the world, given that they technically have a seat of power? Like historically, okay, let's rephrase that. We would assume that they have a seat of power, but in comparison to their parliament or their government, one has to wonder what level of influence they can exert. And if the position is so precarious, I would agree with you that it feels like anything could shake that power and shake that stronghold, topple it over. So it would make sense to me why they have historically been so neutral about so many things that have happened around the world. And I think it came up in a conversation that Sage shared around, former British colonies wanting to know why the Queen never really spoke up over some of the or about some of the things that have transpired in history. And if there's a primary reason of non-involvement or neutrality, that would make sense. But surely, again, one has to wonder how they would then exert influence in another way. Because I feel like it feels very strange to me to have that type of presence without any real power to influence something.
I'm not sure it's precarious, but I do think their power is like exercised in some other way, because we've been asking that question a lot over the years, like what is actually the place of a monarch? But the fact that Queen Elizabeth II had such a long reign and that it's still here today, I think is for a reason, and probably more symbolic or about the image, and maybe it shows how the impact of image and symbols is important, at least to British people and to some extent to a part of the world. Because I remember, I think in history class we were talking about like why the monarch doesn't have a lot of power there, and how they're obliged to be neutral politically and socially. It goes back to like a few centuries ago when they had like a revolution and parliament was created. And I think one of their monarchs wasn't doing a lot of things, so it was impossible to pass a law basically for like 50 years. And so the parliament just decided to have this bill and this deal with the monarch to pass along the political and social powers of a country. It's like the decisional power, I guess. But like they still are, I think, the head of the church with the archbishop. They still get to do like the yearly speech to the parliament, like not to the people, but to the parliament. And so, and they have a lot of obligations, I guess, around the world. So it's to wonder, like, even if we don't actually understand their power, isn't there still like a thread of power there that is exercised in ways that we don't know and is not like actually political? And I know like this angers a lot of people, and this has angered a lot of people because like it was a challenge during the war, like, and during all the crises that we experienced during the 20th century. And former colonial countries, like colonized countries. But yeah, I guess there's an upset there. Like people are asking, like, if a monarch at the head of a country isn't like going to speak about things that we care about politically, like why are they still here? But the fact is they are still here. So I think it's a complex question, but it opens up like a lot of like, I guess, a debate and also a lot of feelings, deep feelings around like why the country is this way, you know?
No, because I mean, like if you look at the UK, for instance, and the scale and the presence of their monarchy compared to some of the European countries, compared to what would be considered monarchs of some of the traditional areas in certain countries. The symbolism of the monarchy in the UK is significant, and their wealth is significant as well. I mean, just I remember back into like 2008, 2009, with the potential global recession. One of the things that was shared, and probably not as well corroborated as it could have been, but one of the things that was shared was that of the people that lost money due to the recession, Queen Elizabeth was one of the people that lost the most money due to the recession. So the wealth and status attached to the monarchy in the UK is probably still way more significant than in most other countries. And then when you equate it to when you bring in the fact that the Queen or the monarch is with the archbishop, the head of the church, then it kind of makes sense, because in most countries there's the separation of church and state. But you never really have church having the status that the UK monarchy has. So it's quite an interesting thing to unpack, and probably there's probably some work to be done in terms of truly understanding it, and also understanding if somebody like King Charles, who was a big supporter of quite a few of the charities in the UK, now says, I need to be seen to be neutral, what happens to those charities? Does it now fall to the rest of the royal family to pick up the slack? Because it's still something that is necessary in those countries. It's been that way. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had these significant patrons of some of these charities.
It's interesting too, because King Charles has also expressed that he would like to be more vocal about the impact that the British Empire has had on slavery and their involvement in that, and he has expressed that he would to speak out more against that and acknowledge it. And I think that's a very good thing, but it's like, so now that he's king, can he's just not supposed to do that or say that, which seems like the opposite of what you should do, you know? And yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, because like with the 21st century, I think like some of their protocols have changed a little bit. So we'll see if that wouldn't change too. But what I'm thinking from like what Grendel said is that she the queen was a symbol and head of the state and head of the church. She also was doing all the most of the international relationship meetings. She was there. And so there wasn't really a separation of church and state the way of a country's experience, because it was in their culture. And just like a spiritual fact, actually, I said that her and her husband were twin flames. And so it leaves wondering if the role of a monarch in the United Kingdom isn't just stability. And so is their function to bring stability? And in that way, maybe like King Charles giving up charities would like benefit the country, because the country would benefit more stability and give back to those charities in some way. But it's like a big spiritual thinking, obviously. It's not something that we can predict, forecast. But yeah, it just got me thinking. It's just like stability is something that people want so much and that gives so much tasty. It's a foundation for wealth and for health in many circumstances. Isn't that just something that the country needs at this time? And obviously it's not perfect, otherwise we'd know. So isn't there that foundation that is already there, and that could be built upon by changing some of the protocols, so that the government is even more adapted to its people needs. So that brings question. And also the big question that I ask is that even though like stability is brought by tradition and by these years and centuries of doing the same thing and being grounding into them, how much is royalty ready to adapt their needs if their country needs it? And we'll see how that pans out in the rest of the 21st centuries. But I do think it could bring about change. Maybe not the end of a monarchy, but some change in some kind of way.
So I think you raise an interesting point around the stability and the openness to changing. And it just jogged in my mind the interview that Oprah had with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and how much how much Meghan Markle felt ostracized, and how much there was no real acceptance of her children as potential royals because of the color of their skin, so like it's that almost that sense for me of the monarchy trying to maintain some level of supposed or confused purity in their bloodline, and then the significant churn that is happening across that space with a prince that's probably fourth or fifth in line to be the next king, because Harry, what was he, fifth or sixth or something like that, so it would have been William's kids,
yeah,
and Harry, so fourth in line, to then step away from the monarchy because life is not comfortable for your wife and your children, and in turn not for you, And you then have to, then you look at this in perspective and say, this churn in the UK monarchy has been in the works for a few years already. And at some point, and I can't remember how long ago, there was already the question of what is the purpose of monarchy and are they still necessary in this day and age? And I think it stemmed out of, again, how the UK was seen to have in the past treated somebody considered an outsider in Princess Diana. Then Meghan Markle, who for all intents and purposes is not white, which was part of the problem. So her kids are also mixed, which was a problem for the monarchy. And yes, we can only go on what we hear because we don't get to experience it ourselves. But at the core of it, there is definitely a need for change. There's definitely a need for change showing up in how the UK is shifting. It's shifting in terms of what used to be very tight-knit, people are starting to speak out. Now there's a desire from the new king to further speak out. And one of the things that I recall reading was that for as long as Queen Elizabeth was there, they were not allowed to because she did not allow it. So sovereign power shifts into the hands of somebody that says, I need to be more present. I need to show up more. I need to acknowledge more things. And all of these things have been shifts. And I mean, it can't be comfortable to see your children unhappy, to see your grandchildren unhappy and not accepted. It can't be a comfortable thing. So one has to wonder what Charles's next move would be, what King Charles III's next move should be.
I'm ready for the change. I hope it changes. I'd love to see that. I think that would be a really cool thing to see, like a more, I don't know, outspoken monarch, or just
a more engaged monarch. Just
yes.
Like on the surface of it, for them to even just appear more engaged.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked the question at the beginning, like, we don't quite know how influential they are when it comes to matters of politics and matters of proper international relations. And so the fact that it seems like they don't really engage, a nice change would be to just have them engaging in life as it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that also like brings up the question to like how important is a symbol, because that's more of what, like, it seems like that's more of like what the monarch is, and like what does that mean then if they're the symbol, and what is that, how important is that?
I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know. Because like, for example,
I think it's significant. I mean, when things happen to the monarchy in the UK, the country just about comes to a standstill. I think it's quite significant. And it might not be seen to be as influential as it is, but it really is, from a culture point of view in the UK, significantly influential.
Right, more culturally than politically, right?
Yeah.
I do think at the core they're still choosing it, otherwise it wouldn't be there anymore. Like we gotta remember that the choice is in the people's hands always, even if they prone to like promote a republic, or even if they're prone to criticizing the monarchy, they're still making the choice. And that brings us to the next thing, is that there are a lot of people who desire change, but are also upset, like Northern Irish people in general, some Scottish people, some people in the Commonwealth, some people in the former colonized countries. And we gotta remember that the power is also ours, and that we have to heal this, because like saying things like Irish people or colored people saying I'm Dutch is dead, why would I celebrate someone who blah blah blah, that's just hurtful. Like you can't do that to your brother. You see them as separate, so there's separation in you, and there's deep hurt in many people. And I understand, because some things are as recent as 50 years ago. You know, it's very hurtful, of course. But we gotta grow up. So this is not just on the shoulders of one monarch. Otherwise, that wouldn't be here anymore. And we gotta grow up in the sense that what part do we play here, and what do we have to heal here? And I think whether you support the monarchy or not, like the situation would feel way lighter for many people if they actually faced their upsets and healed there, because it feels so freaking heavy at the moment. It's like, whoa, attacking someone is not the solution, dude. Wow. So
Well, what's
much
even worse
violence.
is attacking somebody that's just died. Like, what the hell is the purpose of that?
Will that bring you more like relief to publish that on Twitter? Like,
Exactly.
why?
So
And
yeah,
we're not saying that.
there's a level of going from sublime to ridiculous that people kind of actually forget.
Yeah, and I think like it's important to say we're not saying that because we support monarchy. We're not British, so we don't understand that, you know. Maybe Grenville to some extent, because like some of his family probably like remembered the shift of South Africa to independence. But yeah, we don't support that. We just want like what's best for people. And if what's best is the stability that a monarchy and symbols bring, and that's what British people want, why would we go against that? But also, there are some deep problems, but we gotta look at how it makes us feel before, because going on Twitter to attack them and saying violent things, like why people would take you seriously if you did that. It's just my feeling as a colored person that some of the family has known like the deep hurt of colonization. I'm saying like it's not worth it, you know. I don't. It's just a cause for more suffering for you, absolutely not for the white people that you're trying to attack. So yeah.
Something else that just kind of popped up into my mind, and I want to surface it because it's always an interesting perspective. But the monarchy of the UK is actually also a big tourist drawing card. So like if you've ever been to the UK, just the pomp and ceremony around the changing of the guards, the walk along the funeral procession road that Diana's coffin drove, you know, the significance of Elton John changing the lyrics to one of his most iconic songs for her funeral as a dedication to her. Like there's a lot of pomp and ceremony around what happens around the monarchy. And then there's also the significant thing about just having sight of their lands and their castles and all of those things. So that symbolism is quite entrenched in British identity. And as a draw card, it's also quite significant because I never wanted to see it, but when I went to the UK and I was in the UK, I wanted to see it because I was there, and it was this whole significant thing. And there's like pomp and ceremony, and it's crazy. There's like full-on orchestras playing and all that kind of stuff, and it just creates a different vibe when those kind of things happen. So there's a lot of angles to look at this thing from and go, if the monarchy in the UK is not as symbolic and significantly symbolic as they are, what does that do to the country?
Yeah. We're also very integrated in pop culture. Like, how many songs reference the Queen? So, like, why would you spit on the person that made your success? Probably, it's all part of like, we're one, and that person has power now, and you just gotta accept it, and you actually live with it, and you actually interact with it with your song. So yeah, it's just more than a craze. It's just like interacting,
being titled as well. And it's not just that the monarchy is titled, but this titled thing means something to people. To be called sir or a duchess or a duke or an earl, there's a significant history of being titled and what that actually means in that country. And so I feel like the monarchy in the UK is not going anywhere. I feel like it's very entrenched in their identity, but that again, there's definitely an opportunity for shifts so that they have a greater impact on the world, on their country and on the world.
they're a family as well. And isn't the family like the most powerful thing in the world? And it's very important because people relate to family. They desire family. So, and also spiritually, it's like one of the most powerful things. And having twin flames for 70 years, God, like, who wouldn't want that at the end of that country?
And that's also interesting now that you mention it, the spiritual impact of twin flames as influential as they were. Because we don't know the extent of the influence, but it can't have been small. Otherwise, the UK would not still be supportive of a monarchy. So there has been a significant impact. Maybe let's say a significant impact versus influence. They've definitely been impactful in that country. Influential, probably they could have been a little bit more influential or better influential, but hey, just the spiritual foundation of having twin flames so prominent in that country must also speak volumes.
It's cool to see just like the people's clear choice, even if they're unaware of it, that they obviously really want that to be led by twin flames, and everybody wants to be with their twin flame. So it's just cool to see like that kind of like unconscious choice being so prominent. Pretty cool.
Yeah, right.
Cool. I feel like we've reached a point where we can transition into the next topic. So Yurine, I think maybe just if you can give us just a sense of an intro into the next topic, please.
So the next topic is about Ukraine, actually. We haven't talked about Ukraine for a few weeks, and we have news from their front in the war, and the fact that they have won the northeastern side of Ukraine, but also actually lost their last nuclear plant to like the Russian army. But it's still a win, like a big win, and also a big symbol for them that they could actually defeat Russia. A big boost. So good news all around. And actually, when they announced that, Putin decided to double down on the East Front, so the kind of southeast front, a region that he basically kind of already had at the beginning of the war, which is the only one that he has stabilized now. So I thought it was kind of funny. People thought it was like a threat, but like people, well, some of the media in France. But like when you compare it to the kind of wins that and advances that Ukraine has, it feels like it's just like a game of pride for them, or like a game of trying to install that fear in people so that they would give up. But it's like, no, it's not working. See, you're like at the exact same point you were 6 months ago. So yeah, it's definitely like a longer war that anyone had predicted at first.
Or
But
even anticipated, given that the level of sanctions that were applied.
yeah, for sure. But it's as Jeff and Shaleia said at the very beginning, it's that Ukraine has the power to stand up and stand in their power. And isn't that like a good symbol? One of the biggest symbols of last week as well. So yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts and feelings about that.
So like I have a sense, like my feeling here at the core of it, it feels like there's a level of insanity, like a level of insanity at play. And the more that the Ukraine pushes against it, the more the almost more ridiculous the actions become. You know, almost that you know, grabbing into the dark kind of thing, like literally trying to gain a foothold on anything because the stronghold is actually kind of slipping. Like there's the ground is now shaky, so it feels like Putin's forces, or Putin, is just actually grappling on very loose ground. So there's not the traction that seemed to be there in the beginning, and the immovability that seemed to be there in the beginning is starting to diminish progressively by the sheer force of the intention of the Ukrainian people not to be subjugated.
I think it's amazing just to see. Oh, sorry, hold on. Okay, there we go. Just like there were so many articles and just how Ukraine has been so successful this week, and just good is winning. And it just shows you how powerful a choice is, because they are pushing back. They're pushing them back. They're winning right now. They're winning this, and it's exactly what Jeff said, and it's showing that Ukraine is making that choice. They're making that choice to claim their good and stand up to the evil that's there, and they're doing it, and I love it. It's so awesome to see. I also wanted to ask with the power plant, the nuclear power plant. So that was shut off this week completely, right? Is that correct?
It was,
Okay.
and I was just trying to find Sage notes, but yeah, the reason why it was is that it was going to be another Chernobyl if it was under continued attack from Russia. So that was actually a double win for the Ukraine, because Russia was using it as a huge, I guess, excuse to develop like threats against the army there. So yeah. Yeah, that's it. That was very light. Just like, the war is not over, but just this feeling of victory, and a feeling that the choice was right, the rightness of this. Like, I think we can all feel this, and I do feel like Grendel that it reveals more and more of the insanity of Putin, and I hope that the rest of the world is gonna see, like, instead of like media trying to angle it towards like he's doubling down, is like saying like it is desperate for some wins right now, because he has directed all his resources in this to gain nothing. We're 6 months on
Actually,
nothing.
the thing is that energy of desperation is starting to show more and more and more. And we saw it last week in the childish retaliation of reducing the supply of gas through those pipelines. And this week, we're seeing it in the sense of winning a nuclear plant that was actually bound to be a disaster. So, like, what are you actually aiming at here? Like, look, what are you trying to achieve any further?
Well, if you've watched like HBO's Chernobyl series, like, you can see that Russia is very much about appearances, and it's always like we use a lot of like articles and the media to like research into our topics every week, but it's buffered me like the past few weeks how much of a power they were giving to this appearance that Putin was putting up, because it's not the actual truth. Like, it is not trying to have a chokehold on the world. Like, he's in the chokehold and is trying desperately to throw attempts at people to make it seem like he's not, or to win some ground again.
So here's the core question. If he's in the chokehold, is this just not a tantrum?
A tantrum?
An insane tantrum? Doesn't it sound like an insane tantrum?
Wasn't it a years-long tantrum though? Wasn't it ever? When wasn't it a tantrum is my question.
So then the question is, how a ruler of a country throws an almost year-long tantrum and his own country doesn't stand up to it?
Well, we were hopeful that Russia at large would make a choice not to support this, but They are obviously in some ways like the British people not willing to admit that they actually support the monarchy. Maybe some Russian people are actually not willing to admit that they are supporting this in some way. And maybe it's just their indifference that is supporting this, but it's still supporting this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it follows. We've seen it countless times. Silence is consent.
Yeah.
And so, as much as we can say that they are under a very militaristic regime, silence still speaks to consent. So silence still speaks to acceptance, and whether it's real or inadvertent, it's still acceptance.
Mm.
And the fact of the matter is, just like Ukraine has stood up and said, we will not accept it, there's always been this very bizarre line in history that says, you don't abuse the willing.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it speaks volumes. And this was bothering me in the past 2 weeks too. It's like, what about Russia? It's like, we're not hearing anything from them. Is this because we don't have information about them? Or just because like they're actually not speaking about it, you know? But
So
I guess
yeah,
we'll never know.
but part of it is probably also that significant media shutdown. But then let's be honest, that the media was very much a propaganda machine. And so we don't necessarily know what is really happening in the country,
Yeah.
but it feels like there's a lot of shakiness at the moment. It's very unstable.
Yeah.
And it's playing out in how he's directing his military energy at the moment.
I don't think even Putin knows the state of his country. I think we saw this in like one thing I shared at the very beginning of the war is that he was so cut off of his people by controlling the media to be in the image of the government that he didn't even know. He didn't have sensors of actually what the people were wanting. So he's probably not much more aware than us.
But the question is whether he knew or not, does he care? You know, because like we can't really say that somebody that's gone to that extent to influence just about every sphere of their life didn't know. It makes no sense.
He would say that he's doing it for Russia's greatness, but you know,
yes,
it's
but,
words. It's
we
words.
understand the underlying core of it is choosing insanity.
Yeah.
And really, what is there left to do except engage against this insanity, or otherwise not engage with it at all? Because really, that's the core of that's the core of the opposite choice here: is engage with it to push it back, or don't engage and hope that it loses steam on its own.
Which has never worked, by the way.
Exactly. Well, I'm not so certain about the fact that it's never worked. I have seen it work in certain instances, because literally you cannot add oxygen to a fire. You kind of have to deprive it of oxygen in order to suffocate it.
Well, what does that mean? Would people like let him there until he's dead?
Well,
Hoping that he's in his 70s and just
it
gonna.
burns out on its own. It runs out of steam on its own.
Okay, yeah.
Like, I mean,
But
it's
like,
similar to a felt fire. You have to suffocate it. You can't allow it to continue. It has to be suffocated in some way. One of those things is to deprive it of room to move. That's what the sanctions have been all about. It's depriving it of room to move.
Isaiah, what are you feeling about all this?
Just that he's definitely just getting crazier, basically. So
Well, that was very succinct. He's getting
I mean, that works. That's the truth. And that's the truth. And
it's
speaking of
just
like,
yeah, very desperate and crazy.
Yeah.
It's funny because the illusion just gets more obvious, if we look at it like on a spiritual level, it's like it just starts freaking out even more, and it's just so obvious that the illusion the illusion becomes more obvious.
and it's truly unraveling, and I think that's the beauty of it. Just as we saw it surfacing right before our eyes, if you bother to really pay attention, you can see it unraveling, which is also really cool.
Mhm.
I love that. That
Speaking-
is really cool. Yeah.
It is. The truth will always be revealed. Someone will always be revealed, no matter what. Speaking of which, his meeting is a good friend Xi Jinping in Uzbekistan next. So China is meeting Russia in Uzbekistan, and I'm wondering if that is like a crisis meeting because they're both in like so much crisis and so much debt, or is this for show yet again, like in Belarusia? But yeah, just to say about China, like they're accumulating it right now. Like they have like the real estate crisis and the oil crisis, and aren't they like the two best contingent for the worst financial crisis that we've ever known in the past century? So it's not looking very good. And I'm wondering how will they go about it, because right now they're playing a game of pride, just like Russia, about saying like, oh, we're fine and dandy, and we're gonna travel to meet our friend next week. And
Yeah, it's quite bizarre if you think about it. It's like, oh, let's have a tea party while our countries burn, kind of shit. Like you again, just more insanity revealing itself.
Isaiah is just laughing.
It's funny. It does. It just feels like insanity is just aligning. Like that's what this meeting is. It's like
Yeah,
what? It's
that
yeah.
was
But
that
I
was
feel like it's
yucky.
not necessarily aligning. It's literally unraveling. It's
Or
revealing.
yeah.
Like China for the longest part was seen to be really advancing and all of that stuff, only to find that in the background they have significantly badly performing financial loans based on residential investments. And so even their central bank was reining in on these investments and extending credit to these big realtors. And you can just see how that facade is really just falling apart.
Yeah. I'm just reading Sage notes right now. China projects confidence even amid setbacks. China's ambassador to Australia gave an interview and said China will take any means necessary to reclaim Taiwan, will re-educate Chinese people if it annexes Taiwan, and will punish all these Taiwanese people who advocated for full independence. And I'm just thinking, like, isn't that like the core of insanity? And I'm sitting there like, what is that what you're focusing on right now? You're still on Taiwan? Like, couldn't you let that go? It's can you focus on your people maybe right
Exactly
now?
the same strategy as Russia going after a nuclear plant that could potentially be a disaster. Like, what kind of win is that actually?
Well, I don't know, but care about your people.
Exactly. So like I feel like the insanity is revealing itself more and more But that facade of control and being, and that's a facade of control and superiority is just falling apart, because it was literally fueled far too strongly by illusion. And for all intents and purposes, we know that an illusion is going to fall apart. Whether we've seen it in our personal lives, we've seen it with people around us, we've seen it in tongue-in-cheek magic shows, the illusion falls apart every single time.
Like that Chinese real estate video said, any foundation built on sand will like crumble, and it's just the truth. Like,
but that's a biblical truth as well. It's a spiritual truth. It's literally a core teaching in the Bible.
yeah. The sword must be good, and I feel like the real estate crisis and like all these buildings crumbling is just like the tip of the iceberg of what we're saying about China and all these countries that are projecting this confidence and aggression, but like who knows what is happening inside. And that's what I'm more like not worried about, but like I think we should keep an eye on this, because as insane as their leaders are, these are still people, you know.
Absolutely. Cool. But that was a great way to wrap it up today, Irene, because we literally have a minute. So yeah, thank you to everybody for the conversation. Thank you to the team. To everybody that is following us and has followed us and hasn't yet liked and subscribed to our Church of Union YouTube channel, we'd like to invite you to do so, where you'll find all our previous conversations and any other live discussions that have happened in our Unionism Spiritual Discussion group on Facebook. And we look forward to seeing all of you again next week. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.